Rob here. I'm reaching out to see if the current apocalypse measures up to the ones in our youth.
Nostalgia for Doomsday? Well, I never.
Could pop culture have been so wrong?
Recorded high atop my beautiful compound in New Zealand. It's the Welcome to the Inn Variety Show, starring Rob Stevens.
Apocalypse? In this economy? Oh my.
But I really like your flowers.
Oh, why thank you. When you had sent out kind of your synopsis of what this interview video cast is, you know, and you had welcomed like, oh, if you need to wear your post-apocalypse gear, then I just wore this because it's kind of indicates how profoundly unsuited for apocalypse survival I am. I'm disabled, I use a wheelchair, but even before that, so kind of like ever since I was a kid and in the 80s, like tons of stuff was about apocalypse in some way or another. I just remember all of it kind of sending me messages that like people like me are not going to be the ones who survive. Like I was destined to be collateral damage.
Melissa Thompson, it's so nice to see you. How?
Hello, it is nice to be here.
I'm just wondering, how have you been?
Yeah, like I've really spent, I would say, the majority of the pandemic thinking about, oh, I'm doing pretty great, all things considering. I'm not going crazy. Like, oh, look at me. I'm managing stuff for my students. I'm maintaining a calm atmosphere for them until March hit, when the governor of my state, right when disabled and immune compromised people were about to become eligible for the vaccine, like right before that, the governor of my state decided that high risk people are no longer really high risk. And she went to making it age-based only. Hello, eugenics, state of Maine. When that was revoked, then I'm like, I'm not doing as well as I thought. It needs to quit being winter. Everything is terrible. And then it was like constant anxiety.
How did it affect your art making or your motivation to make art?
Well, yeah, of course, yes. I'm going to compare it to when Trump was running for the election and then he got elected and started destroying everything. There was this big kind of moment in performance where it's like, I can't, and you know, I love a bit of devised formalist. Ooh, formalist physical performance. I love it. And there was this point where it's like, oh, we can't waste creative energy doing anything that's not political right now. This is the tool we have, and so we have to engage somehow. I can't create anything that's not about what's going on right now. Yeah. But who the F wants to see anything about what we're actually living through? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, for historians, maybe, quote unquote historians. Good luck with that. But you know, sure. Yeah, I just never realized the apocalypse would be like so stupid, like so short-sighted and dumb. It's boring.
I mean, it's not even formidable. Yeah, it's boring, and it's like petty middle management bureaucrats like caping for the 1%. And like nobody's a hero in that story. You know, like you're not fighting a valiant enemy. You're like fighting someone in a clip-on tie who won't let you have this prescription, or, you know, who refuses to make sure everybody's vaccinated before they come back to school because they don't want parents to yell at them. Or
I know, right?
It's boring, like cubicle bullshit.
Well, you were talking about growing up and
I mean, I think there were a few things you were wondering about, and one was kind of like that youthful kind of finding our
yeah.
in Apocalypse. Two things that were really formative as a kid, and one was being really little, and I grew up in the Midwest. Hello, everything is a tornado. Like we grew up, and like my family did not have a lot of money growing up, but they were still like, you will never live in a mobile home. Like live in a basement, live in a car, never live in a mobile home, because if it gets hit by a tornado, it is not like rooted to anything. So like we got this tornado safety talk a lot. I must have been like maybe 5. And I remember the first tornado watch. And I remember like running to the window and looking out. And I didn't know what a tornado was. I hadn't seen an image of it. And then I thought I saw, like I convinced myself that I saw a tornado, except in my childhood head, right? A tornado, you know, like when Bugs Bunny goes underground and he digs a tunnel really fast and you see that pile of dirt trace his path. I thought it was kind of like that, but with
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque.
With these like red kind of cones or bulbs peeping up under the ground, and that they sought out, like they would snake through your yard to find where you were in your house.
Ooh, like a Critters type of situation or something.
Yeah, I was positive that was what a tornado was. And so I thought I had to look out of the window to look for those so that I would know when to dodge kind of out of the way of this strange underground force that we all had to be so terrified of. Like it never occurred to me that you could go anywhere where there weren't tornadoes.
Oh yeah.
So like I lived in the UK for a little while. They don't have tornadoes. And I live in Maine now. We do not have tornadoes here. And so it's like, oh, this thing that I thought you always had to pay attention for, you know, like every second, except maybe in the winter, right? Is really kind of like a regional destructive force, rather than the tornadoes will eventually ruin all your home and you'll all just be roaming the cornfields.
Oh
my parents used to say, go outside and get the stink blown off of you. Oh, I mean, like the real, I think, kind of apocalypse that I was a child all through was the AIDS epidemic. Do you remember Ryan White, the young boy who got AIDS through a blood transfusion?
Yes.
And like all of this panic about him getting to use the toilet in his school and getting bullied and all of this stuff. And like, I was really small, and I was also not a gay man, like, which was obviously like the big grouping that kind of got wiped out before it started to spread around. But I do remember these kind of like the news reports when we'd get updates on this this new cancer or this new flu or whatever, like when people were trying to figure out the language to describe the condition. And I remember just like going, why isn't anybody doing anything? Hearing about it, but no one was acting. Like the discovery that you could use condoms and that would be like this thing that could protect you, right? So you could live your life, but if you use condoms when you have sex, then we have something to fight the AIDS epidemic with. I remember dating as a, you know, like a full-grown adult, and like this guy trying to talk me into like having sex with him without a condom by like spurting about like, oh, well, you know, condoms only protect you if you use them every single time and and nobody does perfect usage. And I'm like, motherfucker, you can't tell me that my usage isn't perfect because you don't know how terrified of pregnancy I am. I cannot believe that anybody who grew up with the AIDS epidemic would be trying to say, oh, it's no big deal not to use a condom. We were kind of taught that these were like these talismans that would keep us safe in a way.
I remember it was heavily pushed by these MTV dance party types. Just say no to drugs. It seemed like if you're a good kid, you'll not say no to drugs, and you'll use a condom, but you probably won't use a condom if you don't have sex, which you shouldn't.
But like when people started making like condom earrings,
Oh
and stuff
yeah.
like that, how that was so like edgy and political statement. I went to a
Yeah.
theater camp. I got a scholarship to a theater camp like my senior year or junior year or something at Eastern Illinois University. And I remember one of the dudes had one earring that was like a condom. And I was like, I've seen those on like the news. It was like, ooh, do we let him get to keep his earring? This is a high school theater camp. Ooh, oh no.
Hmm.
But it was like this, I'm making a political statement and also.
I associate you with the Mayan Apocalypse, which was most
Oh,
people agree was one of the lamer end of the world, you know.
it was disappointing.
Oh, they ran out of stones, so the calendar ends, and so that's when
2012, was that it?
yeah,
2012?
2012, yeah. And it was like, well, they were right about everything else, so they didn't want to make the calendar because that's when the world ends. And it would just be extra carving, and no one's got time for that, you know. Like, so,
Have to stop sometime because math doesn't stop, right? Like
math and
numbers keep
yeah,
going.
that's what I heard. I went on a blind date during that night, and
Yes.
this was a date with the dude that I think he only wanted to go out with me because I went with you to Fongs Pizza to get crab rangoon pizza, and he was either a
Yes.
waiter or something, and you were trying
Oh,
to convince me to try to flirt, and I was not into it. So you kind of forced me to write on the thing like, go out with me or something like that. Hey, hot stuff.
yeah.
It was very sarcastic, but he really liked it. But he also really liked you, and so
Oh,
so he
I'm a
thought
good
you were
wingman.
asking about and not me. So I think he agreed to go
Really?
out, and I think so.
Yeah, like that has to have been, or maybe he thought we'd all hang out or something, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
think he thought
he
like you
could
were a lot cooler in a way, like which is you were. It wasn't a great date, but it was kind of interesting because there were all these people in costumes in parties, like all around the restaurants, because it was the night that the world was going to end. So like
yeah.
people were dressed like the devil and angels and stuff like that. And when you're on a date with someone in a night where a lot of people think the world's going to end, it's good. Like he gave me a monologue about how if you're at a restaurant, you should never order the cut up tomatoes. You put it on bread. It's like a tomato
Like,
salad.
oh, like a bruschetta?
Yeah, he said never order bruschetta. Everyone knows that because bruschetta is just the tomato like leftovers in the gutter. Like when they cut the tomatoes up for real food, it's all the slop that gets slopped out, and then they make the bruschetta out of that. Which he told me after I ordered bruschetta because, like, you know, so it wasn't like the best date, but it was a date. Yeah, pop culture reference.
I do have an apocalyptic pop culture reference that I legit think about all the time. So there was this movie that I remember seeing, and I think it must have been like a short because I was pretty young, and I found it by accident. So it's not something I knew anything about. It was like when the TV was babysitting me. I didn't know if it I thought I had imagined it and I remembered so much, but nobody I had ever told about it had also remembered it. I thought I must be lying somehow, like that my head was tricking me,
Yeah.
like with the tornadoes, but it is real. This was called All Summer in a Day, and it was based on a Ray Bradbury short story from the 50s. It's about a bunch of kids in a school on Venus. So, like, we cannot live on the earth anymore. And there's this new girl on Venus in the school called Margot. And we think maybe they're like, maybe 13, 14. So that kind of adolescent age. It rains constantly on Venus. But the new girl, Margot, is just old enough to remember that the sun shines for 1 hour every 7 years. And she's talking about it in class, and the teacher says, oh, well, the sun's scheduled to come out in a couple of days. And none of the other kids believed her. They had to like write a poem about the sun. Like they did the lesson plan for when the sun is going to come. And there's this boy, William, who's like, you're a liar. You're a liar. And he gets all the kids to kind of gang up on her. And she's like, no, the sun. And it's like this is what the sun's like. And it's going to happen. And then right before when the sun is supposed to come out for an hour, they all gang up on her and like shove her in a storage room and lock her in. And then the teacher comes to get everybody to take them outside to see the sun. And it actually happened. And so all these kids are like, whoa, this is amazing. And they all forget about Margot in the closet. There's like a little tiny, like a basement window, that's really high and has some blinds across it. And you get this shot of her like reaching her hand into the little striped bit of sun that lands on the floor. And she misses it.
Oh.
You're a kid, you think 7 years is like your whole life.
No,
and so,
it is.
Like, in my head, I was like, oh, this must be 1 hour of sun every 100 years. And so it was when I actually tried to check and make sure that it was real, that it was every 7, which as an adult seems less bad. But as a kid, 7 years, you don't even, like, oh God, now she's gonna die without ever seeing the sun again after everybody called her a liar. And it was the most tragic thing I could think of as a kid.
Wow.
The Golden Girls where Rose Nyland writes the letter to Gorbachev to stop nuclear war and why can't there be peace. She gets invited to meet Gorbachev, but then it becomes this big thing because the letter was so simple. They thought it was written by a child. She's like, we can't do this. Like, why do we need to start wars with each other? Like, I liked this kind of idea that kids got to know about things and we got to have opinions about things. And maybe we would be the ones to figure things out, like figure out solutions. So much of the stuff from when we were kids is so rooted in apocalypse, so much that we at any moment may need to have survival skills that the average kid does not have. I thought I had to know how to hotwire a car. I almost convinced my dad to show me because my dad actually knew how to hotwire a car.
Pick a lock, they can MacGyver anything that they need. And
kind of like shady skills that you weren't supposed to have as a good person or whatever. They were, again, I was probably in the single digits of age, but I collected keys. If I found any lost keys on the ground or old keys anywhere, I put them in my bedside table because that was how I was going to pick locks, was just to find a key that finally fit. And I thought this was something that I would have to have, like this was going to be useful. To bring this drawer full of keys and where you went, which is not particularly efficient, but like this idea that we might be called upon to do something we're not taught in school. I remember there was around Y2K or maybe a little before, but I had a bunch of friends who were buying butterfly knives for some reason.
Oh.
Like, why? Because there must have been a cool action movie where someone did a flashy thing with butterfly knives. And I remember having to learn how to spin it and flip it open and flip it closed, and I could do it. But I'm like, where is that going to come in handy?
Well, it was a lot of work to be afraid in the 80s, I think.
Yes, it definitely was.
Well, I think I'm getting tired out, but I had a lot of fun with this conversation. I have upwards 10 people following me on YouTube. So with this massive audience, is there anything you would like to plug or make people aware of? Like if they want to find out more information?
Oh my God. Well, if you want to find more information about me in general, my Instagram handle is Professor Petticoat. It's not a particularly interesting Instagram, but you'll see pictures of my cats, and occasionally I'll get mad about wheelchair stuff. But I would just say, don't be an ableist jerk, and remember that 20% of the American population has a disability. So we're everywhere. So let's actively practice inclusion. And if your event or space is not accessible to disabled people, your event or space is not inclusive.